Well, hello everyone. Here, show you right here. I'm talking about for paid for right here. Talking about whenever it comes to pay for support, right? And a lot of times you always want to know too that what does that usually mean when we do say paid for? It usually means is toward that there are no payments required, and also that there's knowing. I'm like, oh yeah, it's like anybody might even say too that there's a what's called the difference between what's called just a review statement and also billing statement and the other sorts of documents that are received. But a lot of times it's like a lot of those forms and any paperwork that you do get later on, and you're always want to know too that hey that whenever you do get those, a lot of times like a lot of the forms and all that, and like you say that a lot of times it usually means to just keep these on keep this on record so that way that you can just verify to make sure that everything's all right. You'll keep it for your reference and all that. But a lot of times it sure seems that way that we are probably thinking as to where that paid for basically means that you do nothing or something. But I'm like, well, really that what it pretty much means, I'm like, oh, yeah, is knowing about the eligible and eligible qualifications, right? So a lot of times, in case if anybody were to, ask the questions toward it, that when we do mention paid for benefits, or maybe if it's paid for though, that usually means is toward that you're kind of like asking the questions to where that if you make less than a certain amount per year or so or per month, and knowing about what eligibility it is, what eligibility about whenever it comes to paid for, right? So a lot of times you're always thinking too is toward paid for pretty much means that that payments are not required then, but then maybe later on that they might be required, right? But no, I'm like that we might even say too that really all depends, right? But still that when we say paid for, that means is toward it those payments are already taken care of. You just got to find out, who is eligible to receive the service, and as well as for the the service and resources that are provided. So a lot of times, if we're talking about maybe if we are talking about taking care of something, or maybe if it is related to providing resources or anything such as support and all that. And so that's one thing I want to mention right here of talking about is toward it what does it usually mean what does it usually mean when we talk about paid for. And so a lot of times you're probably thinking is toward it, well, it means it's taken care of, right? I'm like, yeah, well, it means is that toward it you're if your eligibility matches from all these criterias right here, I put the math right here toward it talking about is toward it that for how much you can save, and also that for how much that was paid in full and all that. And so if we would actually do the math right here, and want to know too, just a little bit too, to where that just to understand about whenever it comes to doing the math facts on an actual calculator. And you're likely thinking as toward, well, if you're one of these individuals who are making less a certain amount a year, and then also that for the for what should have been taken care of from earlier, and it could also be maybe related to a new bill into law that was passed and something like that. And so that's why it sure seems that way that each time we do speak about bills, a lot of times you're probably thinking as toward it, well, the whenever you went in there to go ahead and pay for some of that stuff, right? That pretty much means is toward that you were paying out of pocket, to where it was like a copay. Copayment pretty much means that you're paying out of pocket for those expenses, right? And that's why it sure seems that way. That when we do speak about paid for, though, that means is toward that you owe nothing. You owe nothing, and all you really need to do is just make sure that you're there to pick up the delivery, or if anything that for And I know that a lot of packages also is like to where if there's supposed to be something that was supposed to be paid for, and let's just say that if all you gotta really do is you just gotta sign here, just to be able to receive the delivery, right? And so we're probably thinking as to where yeah, well, really, that paid for pretty much means it's taken care of, right? But other statements might even say is that well, really, that you don't really need to think about that as to where that you do nothing and then you don't have to pay. I'm like, yeah, paid for, but still that. But then also knowing that if you want to kind of look at it as to where that paying like a kind of like an example, maybe just a little kind of pay it forward type gift exchange, right? To where that when you once you do pay for something, and let's just say that if you wait a year later, then you wind up getting it for getting it for free, right? And so it's like so that's why it sure seems that way that we want to go ahead and ask these questions right here about the fact about the eligibility and then the qualifying for qualifications, right? But it seems like it sure, like, yeah, like everybody else might say, that paid for pretty much means is to where that you receive the gift, you receive the gift for the delivery, right? But it will show on the statement that it is usually it's $0.00 usually a lot of times. And if I know it, if you had an actual calculator for sure, want to know about what it would look like if you actually do the math configuration right here and say that $0 and I'm like 0.00 right there. So really that when we do look at a bill like that, and you're probably thinking as to where that with or without your insurance, that's usually what you see right there, and you're wondering to where that that $0.00, but then it's like you're warned to where that if you were to actually do the math like that, and let's just say that if we're talking about, like anybody else would say, that if it's a credit card payment, or maybe if it's a mortgage payment or something like that, or maybe even a car payment in 102, that for what is considered to be paid for, and to where that either you don't get a bill, or if anything, that like everybody else would say is to where it's just a little bit cheaper than compared to the last time, or whichever. But really, paid for is supposed to mean is to where it's already taken care of. You just gotta make sure that you qualify, that you're eligible for the requirements, right? And so that's why it sure seems that way, that every time we do speak about paid for, paid for benefits, and maybe if it is anything that is related to about the fact about trying to take care of the paperwork and everything, and you're thinking as to where well, really that what you're looking to the paperwork a lot of times, you may wonder toward it. You keep a lot of those papers, even though if it was nearly 2 years ago or something like that. You try to keep a lot of it, just for your reference, right? Just for your records. But a lot of times it sure seems that way that well, really that do you just want to keep a lot of that for your reference? Just because of the fact that so that way you can show them, just for proof reference, right? But just for proof of a record. So a lot of times it's like we want to look at that as toward it. A lot of the bills and paperwork and everything is pretty much is all recorded about the fact that if you are eligible to receive certain assistance by the state, or anything from the government, knowing about that certain services that are taken care of, and certain processes are paid for, right? And so that's why it sure seems that way, that every time we think about that, and you're warned to where that you were always thinking is that yeah, well, really, that how do you know if it's already taken care of, and how do you know if it's really, if it's actually freed, and compared to knowing that it's like, yeah, kind of like a recovery, and a recovery, for benefits and something like that. So anybody that have done the studies, though, that talked about whenever it comes to recovery, but still, that so it sure seems that way that we would probably need to talk to our neighbors about stuff like this, to where there are a lot of things that they're not quite aware of or knowing about yet, and so all you really need to do is tell them that all you really need to do is just find out, talk to those who are eligible, those who are eligible just to be able to receive. I'm like, yeah, if you're eligible and if you qualify for some of those, and according to your insurance, that you do qualify to receive that support and assistance, and also that all you really need to pay is I'm like, yeah. So it sure seems that way, that every time we do speak about paid for, that pretty much means is to where it's already taken care of. But like everybody else might even say, is that really, that can you really rephrase that to where it's really up to you if you want to go ahead and pay it now or go ahead and pay later on. So like it sure seems that way, that really, if that's really despite the point, to where that if you had a choice to where that if you want to go ahead and pay a certain, like, yeah, if it's pay your fair share, or if it's maybe something such as is to where that you want to go ahead and pay the amount that for what you agreed to pay, on top of all the other services that were received and all. But it sure seems that way, that every time we do get a bill or anything, any source of paperwork that we do read about a lot of times, and you're always warned too, is that yeah, well, really, that if you had a choice to pay either $8, or like, yeah, like everybody else might say, that okay, whenever you do think about that a lot of times, and 102, that okay, yeah, well, you have these options here to where you can go ahead and pay. One of those, you have the 407, or just the 8, or the 135, right? And so like everybody else might even say that if anything, maybe that you would probably say is to where you go ahead and agree to where a certain time of the year that you go ahead and pay that full amount right here. And so it's like, yeah, you pay that amount right there, but then next time, of course, that you don't pay anything. So a lot of times it sure seems that way, that especially anybody who has anybody who's dealing with any financial situation, such as if it's bad credit, or maybe something such as to where that if you would have received a bill, and let's just say if you were not supposed to receive a bill, you were supposed to receive any source of a statement, recording, to where that yeah, I keep this information for your reference of some sort. But a lot of times it sure seems that way, that each time we do the math, though, and just to kind of get your ideas about what exactly is it, about how that all works and all of that, and a lot of times it sure seems that way, that yeah, well, that's up to you if you want to go ahead and pay that full amount, but then next time you can go and get the service for free or something like that. But half the time you're warned too, that yeah, well, really, what is really to consider to be done, a process about the whole matter. And when we do think about most jobs, though, and it's like you're warned to where that okay, you're always told, of course, that one way of how to get the job done, of course, is just to explain to somebody about what this is all about right here. Well, what does this mean, or what does that mean right there? And so a lot of times it sure seems that way, that yeah, well, really, that whenever you do get a bill, a lot of times that usually means is to where that yeah, well, really, that you go ahead and pay whichever amount that you agreed to pay from this category right here, right? And so that's why it sure seems that way, that when we do speak about paid for, paid in full, right? And your word to word of okay, and then the next questions are going to be about is that you qualify for it if you make so much per year, but then also if you are if you were a member of the insurance club or something like that, or maybe that if you were a full resident, here in the county or something like that. So a lot of times, every time we do think about that, and you're always wanting to know too that what's the best way of how to explain everything, and we're probably thinking too that well, really, everybody, I don't really know if I really consider to be cartoon characters or any sorts of pictures or anything like that. And then you want to go ahead and maybe talk on the very bottom right here. I'm like, yeah, you want to give some examples, right? But it's like a lot of those examples, by the way, may not all be accurate. And you're probably thinking as to where if they're not accurate for sure, you can't really make a point about that. But let's just say that for what could be accurate. Well, what is accurate to where it means is to where what is correct, from what for what we read right here, and current or current or correct. I guess you can use either word, but still, I'm trying to say correct right here, and so what is considered to be correct right here, and so a lot of times it sure seems that way that people might even say that. If you see, $8 right there, you would maybe think that you want to go ahead and put on there, maybe highlight that in red, saying that that is incorrect right there. Because the way things are going now, and at the time, you're probably thinking too that, really, that whenever it comes to understanding about doing the math right here, and that you're warned toward it, there was anything. I'm like, if you do get any bills that are less than maybe $45 or something like that, but still that how many of us will maybe want to know too that if you want to go and pick up from one of these categories right here, to where if you want to pay this amount right here in full, or do you want to go ahead and just pay the remaining $8 right here or something like that, and so that's why it sure seems that way that. $8, and then you have right here is the 135 right here. So these are just some ideas about right here about really the type of amounts really to expect whenever it comes to trying to get your idea about how much a bill would originally be and all that. But half the time you're always wanting to know too, especially if you do receive assistance, special assistance through the state or through the government, and you're probably thinking is that well, really that if you were to be given that option to where you can go and pay either one of those, what good would that really do if you were to pay either one of those amounts? And they say that, well, really, if it's paid in full, but then they might even tell you that, oh no, actually this amount right here is for taxes. That we go ahead and it's and let's just say that you pay that much in taxes right there, and so like let's just say that in case if anybody were to say that I'll go ahead and agree to pay the tax amount right there. I'll go ahead and pay the taxes in full right there, but after that, I said so it sure seems that way. That how many of us would maybe say is toward I'll go ahead and pay the tax amount, but then this next time, I expect it to be paid in full, and I expect it to be taken care of the next time. So it sure seems that way that everybody else might say that do you think, and maybe did you think for on average as to where if you see 3400 right there, do you think that you have better luck toward it, maybe that those remaining digits right there would remain at 0 for the next time? And that's why it sure seems that way, that every time we do speak about bills a lot of times, And you're always warned toward it the way you read those bills, and you're probably thinking is that that zero right there is in the wrong spot, by the way. Like I say that, yeah, if it was 0.00 right there, maybe that would be in cents, wouldn't it, or something like that. But it seems like that every time you do look at a bill and want to know that it's beginning to the point toward it. There is no such thing as 89 cents anymore, everybody. If you do get a bill in the mail, for 89 cents, and you may even want to know too that if that really even exists now, Mike, like everybody else may say that, how much was the bill? Oh, well, according to what it says on here, it's 0.89. And I want to know too that, just 89 cents, and that's right. That's what the bill says. It's just 89 cents. And say, yeah, well, really, if there's what you call the maximum amount right here to where that, minimum or the maximum amount. So it's the minimum. There's a minimum. There's a minimum, and then there's also a maximum. So a lot of places might even say that if the bill is too low, for sure, that they're going to probably tell you that, no, we'll go ahead and bill you the next time, for the next month. But, some places might say that if you go beyond of the maximum or something like that. But I tell you one thing, everybody, that I make a lot of this information right here is already starting to kind of remind me of anybody who say that, if you work for an insurance company or maybe the leasing office or somewhere like that, that you'll be getting your ideas about how it all works and all that. But let's just say that on average that whenever you do look at a bill a lot of times, then you're probably thinking as toward that really that the difference between a game of Monopoly, for sure, but still, at the time, you're always want to know too that whenever you're trying to get some ideas about the tax, about the quotes and everything, and you're warned to where that really that if you were to maybe come up, if you were to actually do the math yourself and maybe come up with a few of these digits right here, similar digits, so, and I want to know that, okay, yeah, well, really, that if you were to come up with those digits, though, then that would maybe be the same thing as setting the prices, right? You would make the prices instead of, those prices coming up on the register and everything, but, you probably weren't toward that would really be called setting the prices, right? But let's just say that, though, that maybe if you could maybe program your calculator to where that maybe you can set a price, the price that you agree to pay, right? So I guess, would that maybe mean is toward that you would, I guess at the numerator or denominator or something like that, that you would multiply, if it's 340, maybe multiply that times, and if you actually do the math right here, multiply that times. Times 37 or something like that. And I don't know if you multiply that or if you divide that, but let's just say that if you were to actually do the math right there, and I want to know that whenever it comes to doing it, the math, and if you were actually work the math right here, and if you were to come up with for 340 right here, but let's just say that if you were to actually be working the math, if you were to add or subtract or anything, and want to know that the amount that you had come up with was an equal amount of 14. So I'll use that right there. And so you're probably thinking as toward, okay, yeah, well, that's, to me, that looks a lot like a copay, but like everybody else may say, that if you would actually work the math at your own time and want to know too that, you agree to go ahead and pay something for what you get, and you agree to pay $14. And like anybody says, is that yeah, well that would be called that you're setting the price also, and that would also, I'm like, but still that. So it sure seems that way that yeah, each time we do think about that, and I want to know, yeah, payment plan or something like, but still, talk about for paid in full though, right? That half the time you want to know too that yeah, well this package is yours, but Mike, so yeah, you don't owe anything. All you really need to do is just sign here. But then the next month, of course, that you get something on there saying is toward okay, yeah, well, you don't even have to pay that right there. That you got a new amount right here. The amount that if anything that yeah. And people might even say that if the bill continues to be to get cheaper, even more cheaper for sure. That they'll probably say is that you know no, yeah, Mike, yeah, if it gets to be too low, then for sure that yeah, we'll make one payment for you. And so every time we do speak about math facts, by the way, it sure seems that way almost all the time. That each time we do think about that and want to know that, yeah, well, it seems like maybe not everybody's really going to want to make up their mind about how much the total amount is. And let's just say that if you did start out with what you owed on the taxes, or the remaining balance on the bill was, let's just say if it was 407.89 at the beginning, but then it went down to the 340, and now they're saying it's 598 right there. And one of those reasons was because, like, yeah, it was maybe if it was due to a claim, or if it was a settlement or some kind, something like that. But people, everybody else might even say that maybe if it's every 5 or 10 days that you look at that bill, and maybe that there are certain times of the month to where it's going to say something different. And that's why it sure seems that way, that you can paid for also apply to the bills, to where whenever there's some of them that do get cheaper than others, once you do pay per month. And so a lot of times it sure seems that way, that every time you do speak about the math though, and you're always warned to where that yeah, you go ahead and write down the math, right, just to kind of get yourself just to get an idea about how much everything is and all that. And then by the time you actually go to the store, it seems like that's a totally different story. But it's like, yeah, all the information is all right here for what you talked about from earlier, right? And I want to know is that yeah, and if you would actually show this, just for verification purposes, if you were actually show somebody that, and want to know too that yeah, well, really, whenever you first started working on this, you were actually trying to tell a story. And so, like everybody else might even say that whenever you first started working on this, you were actually trying to tell a story to everybody about, about how the portable pocket, about the email and all that. But like anybody say, is that if you're going to be showing support to the paid for, Recovery Act or something like that, or something like this, toward trying to get something done, trying to get something approved and all that. And that's why it seems like as toward it, yeah, well, really, that can we really look at a bill as toward they just really want your attention, for sure. Like, and you say that that attention, that attention is also going to be about is that you're going to receive an email, or a text alert telling you that a new update, on the bill, about the bill, has been posted. So yeah, or if you want to call us as to where, like, I know usually what I usually say too is that that I think a year ahead of time. Usually a year ahead of time usually helps too. If you say something like, yeah, that by February, and I know that usually, I'm like, yeah, usually by February the 8th, 2022, something like that. So let's just say that on average that if I were to write that down, I'm like, oh yeah, like it could also be, for data for like something like that, April the 9th or something like that, maybe the 17th or something like that, 2023. So whenever you do think ahead of time, a lot of times it just to kind of get an idea about setting plans and a payment plan arrangements and everything, and that's why it sure seems that way. Does that really give you more time to decide about, okay, if there's a certain amount from that category that you agree to pay, and knowing about, like, yeah, like everybody else would say, is to where you go ahead and write this date down. Like people might say this, to where, yeah, you go ahead and you just write that date down right there, right? And you write that date down right there for whatever reason why you did that. And tell people too that that's usually how I manage a lot of my bills most of the time. Is that you go ahead and get a good estimate. A year ahead of time, so that way you can get yourself an idea about what to work with, and then knowing that like everybody else may say that yeah, well, whenever it does come to taking care of bills and other expenses, right, and thinking too that give yourself at least a year, 6 months or so in advance, and knowing about what to expect to see on that bill, and that's why it sure seems that way. Do you really feel like maybe that a lot of the work has improved, at least whenever you're able to write down some ideas about whenever you do get a bill, and want to know is toward a lot of the bills that are being monitored a lot of times, and you're always warned toward it. Not every bill, of course, is going to be stated for the same amount, and that's why it sure seems that way. That whenever you do get a bill, that they'll say is that it's paid for right here, but then also that there's going to be, which causes toward the calculations right here and all that. So a lot of times it sure seems that way that you're probably want to know too that back whenever you were a kid that you were always probably thinking is toward that having to remember to return the library book, then you probably thought a lot of stuff that you had to keep track of that got really complicated. But I'll even tell everybody here that if you want to go and write down a date in particular, just to say that if you were to pick a date toward it that you were ready to send a payment or maybe to take care of something, and let's just say that if you set a date in particular to like maybe 2 months ahead of time, do you think for any reason at all why you think does that really give you a better understanding about what you're working with? And that's usually what I have to say is that it usually does. Whenever I write down the year right there, and one note that you would pick that particular date, just because of what reason? And I'm like, well, really, that I would pick that date really just because, as toward that just to be able to check back, and also that anything surprising, and people I say is toward it really, if there's anything surprising about that. But still, that the type of for paid for means is to where no payments are required, but then also you're going to go ahead and ask somebody about what they're eligible for and what the qualifications are, is toward to receive a gift that is delivered, but then you just show verification about that all this matches for what goes on. And so, like, let's just say that I'm like, yeah, if you have whenever it comes to income, whenever it does come to insurance, and then also whenever it comes to being a resident, in the county, and then of course, from the state, and so like me, like, and paid for can be described in a lot of ways, right? But we probably think is toward it that we can maybe tell somebody that paid for pretty means is to where it's I'm like, yeah, it's taken care of, and you don't no need to send any payments, but we just gotta make sure that everything goes by proof, for qualifications, right? And but on your hand, though, it's like people might even say that whenever you do look at your bills, a lot of times you're probably thinking as to where that yeah, well, really that you look at that bill a lot of times and you're warned toward it. You pretty much try to think about the fact about for like anything for what you call easy going, right? And is toward that you go ahead and agree to pay one of those amounts right there, but then the next time you say the and the next time that we'll go ahead and the bill will say something different, and but anyway, but the way I think, like really, the way I think about too, that one way it does say the same thing would be is toward well, really, that if there was a change or an update that happened, on the bill, and but still, but like everybody else might even say this, toward that there is a reason to why that the bills show up in your name, and maybe why accounts show up in your name, is really because not really because of the fact about people know who you are, and people know that you came or something like that. Are they really? Is everybody else, all your guests and friends and everything, are they all glad to see you and glad to see the fact about that? That this is you want to go ahead and show them this or show them that, but something like that. But a lot of times, when we do speak about doing our homework, a lot of times, talking about paying bills, though, and you're probably thinking as toward it, does that really kind of ease your mind off of the fact about with all the bills whenever it comes to answering just a few questions toward yes or no on any of these questions right here, and you're all thinking as toward, okay, well, if you answered yes to this question and yes to that question, but the no to that question right there. But still, but a lot of times it sure seems that way that, whenever you do get a bill, that you're warned toward, okay, it's in my name for a reason. And one of those reasons, of course, is that, like everybody else would say, is to where we really need to know who we're talking to, so that way we can get an idea about what information needs to be released, and then just for verifications purposes, stuff like that. But a lot of times you want to know too is toward it whenever you do look at a bill, a lot of times, how often are we going to look at it? More likely like a souvenir or something like that. But everybody else might even say that based on your experience, though, there's really nothing you really need to do other than that. Keep that in for your records. But whenever we do work the math right here, and your word toward it, really, have we ever thought about putting that into any source of math equation whenever it comes to taking care of any source of bills or like anything like that? But talk about right here that whenever it does come to the fact about that trying to take care of any source of payments, right? But the way I think about it, how many of us would really believe that if you have received a bill amount and the amount of 89 cents, for sure you would maybe think that something's wrong then compared to the 407.89 right there. But anyway, but talk about, say, for the paid in full support right here. But anyway, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.